I'm Ethan and I work as a photographer. Last year, my wife and I took a trip to Colorado mountains for an art project. She's a keen skier, so she convinced me to add skiing to our plans. We had the choice of staying at a ski resort or renting a private log cabin. Opting for the latter, not only was it more romantic, but also more budget-friendly. The cabin was simple with just one floor, a two-person bedroom, a small living room, a kitchen, and a bathroom. Despite its size, the idea of being secluded in a warm log cabin during a blizzard was incredible. Unfortunately, the storm disrupted the cable signal, leaving us with little to do. One evening, as it was getting darker, I noticed there was still enough light outside for capturing shots and videos of the blizzard for backgrounds and wallpapers. I informed my wife I'd be back in 10 minutes, put on my boots and coat, and stepped outside. Closing the door, I spotted footsteps in the snow leading up to the cabin. The prints doubled back, indicating someone had approached and then turned away. Feeling uneasy but curious, I decided to follow the prints to the right side of the cabin. To my surprise, the footsteps led to the bedroom window, and my heart skipped a beat in fear. Peering inside, I saw my wife sitting on the bed, engrossed in her iPad. My wife noticed me and I waved. When she left, I continued tracing the footprints around the cabin to the other side. They led to the living room window on the opposite end, revealing that someone was stalking us. The pressing question was how long ago this had occurred. Standing there for a solid minute, I debated whether to continue following the footprints. Eventually, I decided to proceed. Now the footprints led away from the cabin, and I was following them to discover where this person was headed, not where they came from. The boot marks indicated their forward direction, moving away from the opening. The footprints led into the tree where I spotted him, a man in a black coat, facing a tree, slouched down, gazing at the ground. He remained motionless, with snow accumulating on his hood and shoulders. I froze, trying not to make a sound. Considering if he needed help crossed my mind, but this guy stood there like a deranged figure doing nothing. Slowly, I began to retreat without turning around, ensuring he didn't notice me. Once at a safe distance, I turned around and stomped through the snow back to the cabin. Slamming the door shut, my wife approached. Sensing something was wrong, I could see the worry in her eyes, mirroring the concern I felt. My wife sensed I had seen something, and after a few minutes of insistence, I finally disclosed what I had witnessed. Reacting swiftly, she began packing, insisting we leave immediately. I resisted, explaining that leaving early meant no refund, and I wasn't willing to depart just because of some strange guy outside. Despite my objections, she locked both doors, ensuring all the windows were tightly sealed, and for the rest of the night we occupied ourselves with reading on our iPads. Reviewing the pictures and videos I had taken, we turned off the lights early. My wife expressed concern about the possibility of the mysterious person still being outside. I reassured her, finding the source of the wind and snowflakes against the window strangely calming. However, our peace was disrupted by a knock at the bedroom window. Both still awake, we recognized it as a human knock. Urging my wife out of bed and into the living room without turning on the lights, we had no weapons, only the option to run. Deciding to leave our luggage behind, we quickly donned boots and coats in the dark. When we heard the knock at the living room window from the opposite side of our car, we seized the chance to run. Using the remote locks on my Wrangler, we hopped in, started the car, and the headlights revealed the man standing on our side, facing the log cabin in the same position as earlier, seemingly hiding his face. We drove to the nearby ski resort without much trouble, staying the night. The next day we returned to the log cabin to collect our belongings, and he was nowhere to be found. When I was younger, my friends and I used to play large hide-and-seek games in the snow. One January night, at the age of 13, during a wild blizzard, we continued our tradition. We formed two teams, each consisting of 3 players. The game was essentially tag, but it involved both hiding and running to an assigned safe point for us. It was the front stoop. The summer tradition transformed with the snow, serving as both a hiding and slowing down element. We tracked footprints and even used snowballs as tools to hinder pursuers, making it the most enjoyable game of our childhood. However, in a particular year, things took a bad turn. It was our turn to hide. My teammates, Dan and Christian, chose their spots. Dan hopped the fence to a backyard, not considered cheating in a rule-free game. Christian climbed onto a friend's shed, hiding behind the sloped roof. To throw the pursuers, I ran all around the backyard, leaving a confusing trail of footprints. As our friends from the opposing team approached, I had to act fast. I signaled Christian to run from the roof and I concealed myself in the bushes, laying flat in the snow. Two others scrutinized the intricate footprints and I knew they would lead to me. When they approached the bushes, Christian jumped down, darting from the front lawn, with the two giving chase in both directions. Realizing the danger, I seized the chance to conceal myself further, following Dan's lead. I climbed onto the shed's roof and then hopped over the fence into the adjacent backyard. However, I couldn't spot Dan. Despite the searching for his footprints, I discovered a different set of tracks in the snow boot marks near the fence where Dan landed, which then transformed into this distinct trail as if something were being dragged. I traced the trail to the back door of a pitch-black house, where it abruptly ended. Connecting the dots, my heart sank. Returning to the fence to seek help, about halfway across the yard, I heard the sliding door of the house open. A person in a black coat with a hood covering their face emerged, heading towards me. I screamed and barely managed to pull myself over the fence before the person could grab my legs. My friends rushed into the backyard, followed shortly by my friend's parents. I recounted the incident and the mom called the police, while the dad, armed with a gun, went to the other side of the block, knocking on the door. There was no answer, so he entered. We waited outside, and within a few minutes, he came out with Dan in his arms. Dan was unconscious, his face red and injured, as if he had been struck with a shovel or something similar. There was no car in the driveway, indicating the person had left when I escaped. He never returned to his house, and I'm quite certain he's still wanted by the police to this day. It serves as a stark reminder that anyone, even your neighbor, might be a predator waiting for an opportunity to strike. When I was 17 years old, I found myself home alone one night. Coincidentally, it was the night I decided to try pot for the first time, and it turned out to be the most frightening moment of my life. It happened in mid-December during a late fall snowstorm. I was in my room with the movie playing in the background, Mr. Doubtfire, if I remember correctly. However, I wasn't paying much attention to it. Instead, I was trying to figure out how to inhale without coughing. I spent about half an hour breathing in smoke from the pipe, unsure if I felt any different. After another 10 minutes, I finally sensed a change. It was a unique sensation that I couldn't quite explain. The room seemed more calming, and I became either more or less attentive to my surroundings. It was hard to tell. All I knew was that I felt different and excited, wanting to continue. Suddenly, I thought I heard a sound from downstairs. I muted my TV and listened. It sounded like a tapping noise at the front door, like a light knocking. Nervous, I worried it might be my parents or sister. Unsure if I was noticeably acting differently or if they could smell it around the house, I went downstairs, peered through the peephole, only to find not my parents or sister, but a severely undressed individual. Living in the suburb, different from many where houses are around 200 yards apart, we encountered an almost homeless-looking man on a stormy night. Despite having neighbors, the distance is notable. When this unfamiliar dirty-looking man appeared on a porch, I decided to pretend I wasn't home. Watching through the peephole, he persisted in knocking louder. I chose not to answer, feeling conflicted but unwilling to let a stranger in. Back in my room, I continued hitting the pipe, growing more accustomed to it and feeling its effects. My mind wandered, forgetting my surroundings, until a loud thud at my window scared me. Turning off the TV, the room went pitch black. It took a while to link this to the man at the stoop. He was outside, and I was in, convinced he couldn't harm me. Despite my attempts to reassure myself, being heightened by my paranoia, making me fearful of every little noise, I became overly alert, even to the smallest house sounds. Nothing occurred to me for a few minutes, and the pitch black darkness eventually wore me out. Surprisingly, I learned that the pot can induce sleep more effectively than sleeping pills. I woke up later thinking it was around 3 in the morning, but the clock showed only 1:15. I had been asleep for just 20 minutes. As I sat up, I thought I heard something from the den. Rubbing my eyes, I remembered the man. My heart raced again as I prepared to get up, realizing there was something beyond my half-open door. Leaning in and squinting, I saw somebody peering into the room from behind the door. I let out a horrified scream as the person emerged and walked toward my bed in the dark. "I just need a warm place to stay," he said. With no choice, I shoved him to the floor when he reached my bed. It dawned on me that he was a very skinny and weak man. I managed to drag him up, pushing him forcefully towards the front door. Despite his feeble attempts to fight and resist, he was too weak. His eyes seemed crazy. I shoved him outside, locked the door, and promptly called the cops. I remained downstairs near the broken glass to ensure he couldn't re-enter. When the cops arrived, they found him curled up in a ball in my front bush. They took him into the station, and he was no longer my problem. Reflecting on it today, I do feel a bit of guilt. He was undoubtedly disturbed, and I couldn't gauge how dangerous he was. Nonetheless, it remains the scariest experience of my life either way.